Throughout the country, you had districts that would close down before they would allow black kids to go to school, white kids.
Brown versus Board of Education passed in 1954, marking one of the biggest rulings in U.S. Supreme Court history. But that doesn't mean public schools automatically integrated overnight. Factors like residential segregation kept black and white children from going to school together long after 1954. But here in Illinois, Urbana schools became the first district in the state to implement a concrete desegregation program. That was in the mid-60s, and it's all thanks to the Ellis Drive Six. Dr. Evelyn Burnett Underwood was born in Mississippi in 1943. She spent her early years on a cotton plantation where her family worked as sharecroppers.
At the age of 3 years old, I had to carry the water dipper, to dip out the water, and my sister carried the water jug because that field hands couldn't stop long enough to get a drink of water, so they had kids doing that.
Underwood and her family said goodbye to the South in the early 50s and headed to Urbana.
We were looking for a better life.
Little did Underwood know she'd help make life better for many other people in Urbana. In the 1960s, Dr. Underwood and her husband bought this home right here. At the time, it was pretty much the only neighborhood where they were allowed to buy the home, and they lived just within 4 houses of the rest of the Ellis Drive Six. Joanne Jackson, Carlos and Willetta Donaldson, and Paul and Shirley Hersey made up the rest of the group. The Hersey's daughter, Cherise, sits on Urbana City Council now, but has clear memories of what was happening back then. She was in kindergarten at the time.
My older brother, he was kind of a prodigy, and he was in the gifted program at Wiley, and they would send a bus to pick him up to go to school, but all the other kids were kind of walking to school, and my father was like, there's something that we could do, you know, my parents both were, there's something we can do about this to make this more equitable.
It was mainly white students who went to schools like Wiley, Leal, and Yankee Ridge. The majority of black students lived on the north end of town and went to the nearby Hayes School, now known as Dr. Martin Luther King Elementary.
The materials they would get would be 3 or 4 years behind. It was just passed on from whatever schools were south of University Avenue, and it would finally get to Hayes School.
These children needed a chance, needed an opportunity.
The Ellis Drive Six went to school board meetings fighting for equity. Cherise says her father, Paul, and Carlos Donaldson were mail carriers at the time. They came across a U of I PhD candidate while working who had written a dissertation on the lack of equity in Urbana schools. That research served as evidence for the school board.
I got letters where I wrote to the Leal area and the Yankee Ridge area, and some people who open-minded.
In 1966, the board passed a motion to formally desegregate the schools. Black children were assigned and spread out across all the elementary schools in the district, busing the students in from their neighborhoods. Cherise says this busing plan eventually became the model for other districts across the state.
Some people had to ride the buses to keep our children safe once the desegregation, integration was implemented, because they was, the white communities of some of them was so angry.
But people like Underwood didn't back down. In '68, she became the first black person elected to the school board at just 25 years old.
I didn't have a degree, and most everybody had a degree on it, but I had guts.
Underwood went on to serve 4 terms. She was the only black board member in those 12 years.
We need a seat at the table.
Dr. Evelyn Burnett Underwood ended up earning a total of 5 degrees over the years, including her doctorate in education from the U of I in 2000. She also served on the National Caucus of Black School Board Members. Paul Hersey was elected alderman in 1964, making him Urbana's first black elected official.